Good evening and welcome to a special live edition of Irons United. We've just ended a season that I'm sure most West Ham fans would really want to forget. We've witnessed a team that has been shocking for the best part of the season. We've witnessed the usual plethora of player injuries which have plagued us at crucial stages throughout the season. We've witnessed the end of the Slaven Bilic era and the dawn or the rise from the ashes of David Moyes, although that wasn't that was only short-lived. And we've witnessed a board who seemed to be asset stripping throughout the season itself, especially during the winter transfer window. Plus, we've also seen problems with the West Ham United supporters club that we all support. But I think one thing that stands out from the season that most of us are going to remember is the fan unrest. We've had fans falling out. We've had fans protesting. We've had fans calling the club, the West Ham, disunited. My name is Stel, and with me tonight are two special guests who are part of two separate action groups that they both run. We have Wayne Thornell from West Ham United Fans Direct Action Group, and we have Paul Turner, Vice Chair of the West Ham United Independent Supporters Association. And of course, we have a familiar face, Anton. Welcome all. Paul, Wayne, going to ask you a few questions about your respective groups, a few questions about how you've seen the season go so far. We want the debate to be honest and open, but yeah, you can go ahead and swear so long as you don't do it to each other. I'll hand you over to Anton to give you a few rules.
Yeah, guys, just to reiterate what Stel said, we're just going to have some questions. We're going to give them out to both of you. I'm going to be in control of the socials tonight. We've decided just to throw me on so I can kind of reiterate some questions coming in from the live chat. So make sure you get your questions in. Make sure you subscribe to our channel, because obviously you need to put the questions in. You need to subscribe to the channel so you can watch our content, etc. And then we'll put all the kind of links to the two guys, all the WHUISA, the direct action group from Wayne's involved in, and we'll get them in the comments and stuff like that below. But like I said, make sure you log in, make sure you subscribe to our channel, make sure you get the questions in, put the thumbs up, and I will pass you back over to Stel, who is going to lead on the questioning. I may jump in every now and then with your question, so good luck, guys.
First question to both of you. Do you think that by finishing 13th in the league, the board would deem that as a successful season? Wayne?
Unfortunately for me, it papers over the cracks. And I think they will see that as we succeed. They've succeeded. I can't see that finishing 13th is going to encourage them to invest in the squad, because they're quite happy just to plod along as we are. We're here today about I want to employ a manager with the same ambition as them. Well, that statement worries me, because from what I can see, there is no ambition at the club anymore. Mm-hmm. Ambition's gone. I mean, I just think 13th, we've papered over the cracks, and they'll be quite happy to go out, spend 30, 40 million, which is a nothing sum in these days, and that'll just plod them through next season. There's going to be no mass investment in the club. I just can't see it, not with them in charge.
And Paul, how do you see our final standing of the season?
I agree with the vast majority of what Wayne just said. To be absolutely honest, it doesn't matter where we finish in the league as long as it's above 17th and above, seemingly, for this ownership as it stands at the moment. They keep coining in the money that you get from TV revenue. It was last season, it's gone now, where David Sullivan in the Telegraph said that they budgeted for 10. David Gold at the beginning of this season said they budgeted for 8, which just, again, seems to be pie in the sky, thinking just nice platitudes and words which actually don't come to fruition. And as Wayne rightly points out, they might spend whatever amount of money it is. There doesn't seem to be any real-time actual change in, or material change in actually how the club's been run, as well as the fact that West Ham, regardless of what stadium we play at, be it I know in Stratford or when we were back at the Bowling Ground, we pretty much had the same season we would have had at the Bowling. And we, among 10, 11, 12 other teams, are basically fishing for the same amount of money, for the same amount of quality players out there. So we're all in the same, fishing in the same pool, so to speak, and there doesn't seem to be an actual change. regardless of what stadium we're playing football in right now.
Would you say, therefore, that I mean, it's pretty obvious, I think, by both reactions there. Would you say that the stadium move has been a disaster in terms of actually not giving us the next level that we were all promised?
We all bought into the lies, didn't we, unfortunately? We were sold a dream and it's never materialised. And I don't see under this ownership it's going to materialise. Yeah, Karen Brady's doing some of the bits that the real West Ham fans group and the other groups when we met are asked us to do. But again, that's papering over the cracks. It's not investment in the squad. Yeah, we're getting things done. We're getting the ground. We're getting hoardings put up, flags around the pitch. But that's not going to make David Sullivan spend 60, 70 million pounds in the summer, is it? And I think that's the problem we've now got. Although Karen's going through with what she promised she'd do, and the real West Ham fans group are still banging on with her and getting that done, I think we've got now a bigger problem. And that problem is David Sullivan. Because we were promised a director of football, a total overhaul of the way transfers are done. That's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's still going to be the David Sullivan show. And you're not going to get a top manager in when you've got Sullivan sticking his nose in every 5 minutes. It's just not going to happen.
So moving on to the manager, we heard today that David Moyes has definitely left the club. Paul, who would you like to see manage the club, and what type of manager do you think we'll get at the club?
Different managers, same owners. To be honest, it doesn't matter at any point in the last 8, 9, 10 years. There's been three consistents in the way that this football club's been run or mismanaged, as a number of people would call it. And it's the three people that sit in the three highest positions in the boardroom. In terms of what managers are available, to be honest, I haven't actually thought about who I'd like to see or I think would come. Because realistically, you have to work within the structure that Sullivan's going to set you, which is Sullivan will want to pick who he wants to pick and try to dictate to you who your budgets, what you want to do, or what he thinks you need to do. So realistically, it could be anyone out there who's probably looking for a job or looking to re-establish himself like Moyes was. And what will actually change as it stands at the moment, unfortunately.
How about you, Wayne? Who do you think? What type of manager do you think the board will get, and what type of manager would you actually like to get?
I would like to see somebody with fresh ideas, somebody with contacts around the world to get these good players in. But again, what's going to happen is we're going to get a journeyman manager who's going to say yes to Mr. Sullivan at every chance. Mr. Sullivan's going to use his same agents as he does now. We're going to get the same dross level of players brought in. We're not going to advance as a club. I mean, for me, what sums up the circus at the club is when David Gold last night comes out and says, I'd like David Moyes to stay as manager. 12 hours later, he's gone. Surely a co-owner had some idea of what was going to happen today. Or is it now just the David Sullivan show and Gold's just going along for the ride? I just don't know.
Well,
that's pretty much the way it is at the football club at the moment. It is David Gold just has his investment sitting there. It is David Sullivan's domain. They keep the West Ham board, that's what they keep saying, it's the board's decision. It's actually the majority owner being David Sullivan. He calls the shots. David Gold just sits there, or is presented as the friendly face, I'm the fan, I lived on Green Street, that old rhetoric again and again and again, when it's actually Karen Brady and Tara Warren who do the day-to-day bidding of David Sullivan. So the real people actually in charge of the football club is David Sullivan as a majority owner, and then Karen Brady and Tara Warren underneath him.
Yeah,
so in a way, he's just a puppet of the group.
Yeah, Karen and Tara, they clearly run the daily, everything at the club. And Sullivan is the man in charge of transfers. She made that quite clear when we met with her the first time, that transfers are the domain of David Sullivan. And we were promised that was going to change, but I just don't see that changing. He's not going to give up that power.
Well, moving on Sorry. No, carry on, Paul. Carry on.
So I was just going to say, when myself and the chair of the Independent Sports Association actually sat down at David Sullivan's house and met him, he did say that he was going to look at a director of football, and that's something he would want to bring in. And the only barrier to him at that point was dependent on what league West Ham United were in. And then obviously everything that's come out since has basically been completely rowing back on that to say they effectively they don't want a director of football, or they actually, Sullivan wants to retain all this power and record for himself. When actually Wayne made a very good point earlier, when there should actually be someone who is experienced in that position, who has contacts in world football, be it the manager or the director of football level, to actually perform that task. Because some of the more successful clubs out there do actually have the infrastructure at the football club to help run the football side of things as well as the administrative side of things, and West Ham United doesn't have either at this moment.
Just that, sorry to jump in there still, just one quick question, because I think it's relevant to what you're talking about previously when you mentioned David Moyes. Coming in from Marcus Johns, how will you view David Moyes' tenure at West Ham, a failure or a success?
He came in and done the job he came in to do. He kept us up. So from that degree, it was a success. Did the fans enjoy watching his football? I'd say no, but he was brought in to do a job and he did it. Simple as that, really.
Yep, I agree with that point, where he was tasked to play in the league. The thing I find a real shame, he inherited the squad and the team at that point. We were in the quarter-final of the League Cup, and basically West Ham United did not turn up that day, which was a massive disappointment, a massive shame. Arsenal were just as bad, but we were worse than them. And then the FA Cup, we basically were out of it as soon as we could, realistically, like if you're just watching it from the terraces, where it didn't seem like we actually put in too much of an effort in any of the 3 games we played. And I don't want to be a supporter of a club that just thinks, oh, I just want to stay in the top flight. My support of West Ham has never been about whatever league they're in. It's a bit about supporting the team and hoping they actually go on to try and win and achieve success as much as possible. But Wayne's right when he says that Moyes was brought in, short-term deal, stay in the league, and that was it.
Paul, a question directed to you. You mentioned a moment ago about the meeting with David Sullivan that the ISA had. Were you the only group that were invited to that particular meeting? And if so, why do you think that was the case?
That particular meeting, yes, it was just myself and the chair of the Independent Sports Association, along with a representative from the Football Supporters Federation, who we are affiliated to. That particular meeting, we did actually get in direct touch with David Sullivan to ask for that meeting. It was off the back of a lot of, obviously, discord and animosity and everything that took place in and around the 10th of March, and everything really. But it was also to actually try to pin him down on a few points about how frustrated fans felt and still feel to this day as well, and some of the things that have been going on or continue to go on, which ultimately need to actually change at this particular football club of ours that we all love.
I don't want this to sound like a question that antagonises in any way, but do you think that perhaps it would have been better to have brought along maybe 1 or 2 of the other groups that may have been involved in some of the protests? Now, I kind of understand the history behind what's gone on, but I don't really want to get involved in that. But do you think it kind of helped or hindered fans by the ISA going along to this meeting alone?
I don't think, in terms, because the way your question's phrased, I don't think it hurts fans in general. Our membership, they were put a list of 25, 30 questions, and the 12 most popular questions on that list are actually put to David Sullivan directly, and we were able to obviously ask in and around those questions based upon his answers. Ultimately, it's up to any other group or blog, website, with whoever it is, to actually get in touch with the football club, David Sullivan, to basically get in a position where you're banging down the door to actually ask for these kind of conversations. Because admittedly, we are going to try and arrange a second meeting, a follow-up meeting with David Sullivan this summer, to actually try to, as I say, nail him down to particular positions about the way the football is being run, and some of the things that we have discussed with him previously, like the fan on the board initiative, which is currently being discussed by a working group of ours. So, very long answer to a very short question. I don't think it's hurt the fan base in general, but there is scope for, say, ourselves, Wayne with the Action Group, anyone else, we can easily talk to each other. We can all come together off camera, off one of these programs, chatting in a beer garden somewhere. There's absolutely no issue or concern from my personal point of view on that.
Okay, and for you, Wayne, you've just set up this new group, the Direct Action Group.
Yeah.
What's the reason for starting this group? Why? How do you think that's going to sort of help develop the fan base into what you want to achieve?
Well, our aim behind that was purely and simply to try and keep the pressure on Gold, Sullivan and Brady to go through what they promised to do. Because if you look at our history, we've had two big ones, haven't we? The bond scheme and the Brown Out campaign. And both of them were won by direct action. Because let's be honest, we can put 20,000 posts on Facebook saying we've had enough of David Sullivan. Does that bother him? I don't think it particularly does. Does 2,000 people standing outside his corporate entrance every match day? Good human protest, but getting the message across to him. Does that bother him? Yes, it does. Because his corporate guests have to go through them doors. And that causes him an issue. And I think that's the big problem we've got at the moment with the fan base. I'll be totally honest with you. A lot of the groups, I think, let themselves down very big time. Because let's be honest, on March the 10th, there were 70 groups, I believe, back in that March. And since then, how many of them groups have actually stood up and done anything? I don't always agree with the way WHUISA do things, but credit to them, they've done something, which is more than a lot of them groups out there have done. It's so easy to sit there, mounting a Facebook campaign, saying we're unhappy, we want this, we want that. But then you need to get up and do something about it. And not enough people are doing that, in my opinion. But I would happily sit down with any other group and discuss things. I've no issue with that whatsoever. But our whole aim was to keep the pressure on Gold and Sullivan, to be honest with you. And I believe that if we'd have had 2,000 people outside that corporate entrance every home game, them last 3 games, it puts more pressure on him in that transfer window to actually spend some money. Because we've got a major problem this time, because if he doesn't spend money in this transfer window, the transfer window shuts as the season starts. So we can protest all we want. Nothing's happening again until January. We're back in that same position again. But yeah, I'd happily sit down with any other group and discuss things. Got no problem with that whatsoever. But I do believe that meeting with Sullivan did cause a bit of a split because certain groups felt alienated. Well, but we need to get over that and move on.
I want to highlight something that happened with the Liverpool fan base a few years ago. It's not too dissimilar to what's happening at West Ham at the moment. In 2008, Liverpool fans created the Spirit of Shankly, SOS, and they joined forces with another fan base group, Share Liverpool FC, in 2010. These supporters groups did exactly what you guys are both doing. They're protesting against the owners, against the then current owners, Hicks and Gillette. And through that, because they joined forces, their numbers swelled. And even John Henry, the new owner, professed to saying that they had quite an influence on him becoming the new owner. But what I've heard so far from both of you sounds like you're on the same page, very much so. So how would you, it's good to hear that you'd be willing to talk. So how would you both go about trying to bring that together? But I think the one thing that perhaps people might have to accept is, in order to be a stronger force, is to actually be as one. Now, would you want that? And if so, how would you go about doing that? I'll offer that to you, Paul.
To be absolutely honest, the kind of conversation about the ins and outs and particulars of how it could work or run is probably actually, I know it's a massive cop-out answer, but it's best suited for kind of offline, if that makes sense, where we can actually talk completely honestly about certain things that may have happened, whatever it is, to actually give you a proper answer for obviously the purposes of here. There are a lot of things that are actually on agreement on. It's pretty much the nuance of how we go about things. It's pretty much like the South Korea to the North Korea kind of situation. It's basically the same people, just different ways of going about it, where the same aim is actually all of us want something a lot better for the fan base in general. And at the moment, the prevailing wind is anti-Gerald, anti-Brady, anti-Sullivan. And Wayne does make a very good point. There seems to be a bit of apathy out there in terms of either I'll leave it to someone else or same old West Ham again, roll your eyes, don't actually either roll your sleeves up and do something about it or put your head above the parapet and actually try to start something, achieve something, actually make their lives uncomfortable. Because, again, it was a good point earlier as part of the conversation. Reputational damage rather than financial damage is probably the way to go way things are being run at a particular football club about.
And what about you, Wayne? I'll offer that question to you as well.
I think it's got to be a two-pronged approach, isn't it? Let's be honest. We've got to speak to them because at the end of the day, they own the football club, regardless of what we think of it. But we've got to get all the groups together again. That's the key to it. And until we can get the groups together and people actually start doing what they say they're going to do, because I can go on Facebook. I'll be honest, but not Southampton game, the Man City game. Southampton game, we probably got 600-700 people marched. The Man City game, going by what people say on Facebook, was a big mistake because we expected at least double that. We got 150 people. So where are all these people that say they want change, say they're going to do it, but then when it comes to it, they vanish?
It's a good point because I was going to come.
Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. Part of the difficulty in general as well is we're an independent support association. We have a constitution. We're affiliated to national bodies and so on and so forth. Wayne is heading up a direct action group. It's set up as a protest group to keep the pressure on what they're doing. So there's actually I don't mean this as any sort of slight against Irons United, but there's no editorial content. We are beholden to our members. Wayne will be listening to what the people as part of his group are saying as well. But a lot of these other what are being called groups are actually websites, blogs, people that have massive Twitter followings and the like, who actually are beholden to editorial content or their own point of view, trying to get their own pound of flesh out of things, where actually some of them might have commercial interests as well. So it's not as simple as having this kind of conversation where we can actually realise there's a fair few things that we actually agree upon, and then we can actually have that as a basis for a further conversation about, great, we agree on these certain things, how are we actually going to get the end result that we all want to achieve?
Paul's hit on a great point there, and it's something I was going to bring up later anyway. Now, I'm not going to name the groups because it wouldn't be right to do it because they're not on here. But there's certain groups out there who claim to be back in the march. Yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Because we believe we had a good 7-8 groups behind us, clearly, for the later marches, not the original march. Them groups, they would have turned up if it had been 10,000 people there because it would have gotten views. Because there wasn't them big numbers there, they weren't interested. I'm doing this because it's something I believe in. I don't care whether I get members in my group, views, it doesn't bother me. I'm doing this because it's something I believe in. I believe there's too many groups out there who are doing it for likes, for views, and to get more members. And I think that's the big problem we've got. We need to, if people want to get involved, do it because you believe in it, not because you need likes.
It might be worth us telling you where Irons United stand on all this. We have always tried to remain and do remain impartial. There are obviously individuals within the group who have differing ideas, but we welcome ideas from all groups, which is why we've invited you both on tonight. We don't stand on one or the other corner because it doesn't actually serve our purpose to do so. So what we're doing is, I hope you can understand, is that we're just trying to get this highlighted to fans who either are already aware or may not be aware of what you both stand for.
That's been your stance from the start, though, isn't it? So I've got no issue with that. The groups I have an issue with are the ones that claim to be behind something when they're not behind it. You guys have always said that's your stance. I've got no problem with that. I've got no problem with people that don't want to protest. If you don't want to protest, that's fine. It's your choice. Happy with that. But don't say you are going to protest when you don't really want to protest, because that's a problem.
It's an interesting point, because it kind of brings me on to another question. You mentioned about the Man City game. Do you think there's any other reason apart from just self-interest why the turnouts were not as big as you'd hoped? Is there potentially are fans potentially slightly jaded by what's been happening, and by the fact that there are quite a few groups involved? Do you think it's a little bit fans are probably sort of sitting there thinking, well, who do I support? Who do I back? Who do I listen to? Is that possible?
I think there's a degree of that. And I'll be honest with you, the biggest problem we've got, or we had, and the biggest excuse for people not wanting to get involved was because March the 10th was cancelled. That is the biggest problem we come up against. I'm not going to do it because March the 10th was cancelled. And I don't know the solution to that problem. I'll be totally honest with you. But people have got to put that aside now. March the 10th didn't happen. We know it didn't happen. I had my views at the time. I wanted to march. And we all know where it went on from there. But people have got to forget about that now. And if they believe that they want change, if they believe protesting's right, if they believe they want Golden Sullivan to change their ways, then they've got to stand up and do it. Because it's no good 500-600 people doing it. It's got to be numbers doing it. Because that's the only thing they're going to take notice of.
Quick questions coming in there. I just want to kind of reiterate what's happening on YouTube. Someone has mentioned that they would like to know what original groups were involved. And someone's saying, if we had a world-class team on our pitch but we still had fan problems, would the marches or the protests continue? 2 questions, over to you guys.
Well, the original list of groups was 70-odd groups. So I couldn't go through and name them all, to be honest. Half of them groups I'd never even heard of until they put their name in the ring to support the march. So we all know the main groups that were involved. It was the Real West Ham Fans Action Group at the time. There was OLAS, there was Crosshammers, WHUISA. The list goes on. But yeah, obviously, if we had a world-class team, would the protest be happening? Probably not. Because if we had a world-class team, then Gold and Sullivan are doing what they promised to do and deliver a world-class team, which is what, at the end of the day, we all want. And we haven't got that at the moment. So we have to do something about it if we want things to change.
Paul,
to go back to...
Sorry, go for it.
Sorry to interrupt you there. Sorry. To go back to the previous point you made, Stel, I completely respect Irons United opinion. Just to remark on that. I actually think in no way, shape or form going into anything that happened on the 10th, was meant to happen on the 10th of March or anything that happened in the week before that. I think a lot of people see the fact, hear the word march, and the word was actually jaded. I think that's correct, where they feel that particular kind of protest, I can't get behind it again because something that was meant to happen on the 10th of March didn't happen. So there's a couple of other ways, different ways that things can be done or added to or taken in a completely different way, which I'll be happy offline to actually speak to Wayne about. There's a couple of ideas I actually shared with the person who was controlling the Real West Ham Fan Action Group Twitter account at the time during February. Well, I don't know if any of a couple of ideas I came up with were actually shared with the committee or not, but I'd be happy to talk with Wayne offline from this about those to see if they were really used to him. The question about if we had a world-class team in that stadium, there would probably be a lot less disquiet, because if there's any sort of popular uprising or protest, if things are bad, then people are actually more interested in trying to do something about it, where it seems to be more of a collective sigh of relief. We finished 13th, and now we can just forget about this season, move on to the next. It doesn't solve anything. It's still the same situation when you walk into that stadium in August of next year. It'll still be the same owners. So what has actually changed?
Yep. Last question coming in from YouTube before I pass back to you, Stel. The question is coming in saying, Paul, were WHUISA originally involved in the march? And if so, why the change of consortium to action group? Just wanted to clarify, just to make sure if their question adds up. Were you originally involved in the March 10th? And if so, why the differentiation now?
The organisation of the march that was set to take place on the 10th of March was obviously the West Ham Fan Action Group. The group collection of groups that Wayne's spoken about was called the West Ham Groups United. So nobody was exactly co-opted into anyone else. No one had to become part of another organisation. But that was the name of the umbrella group of ourselves as the association, Wayne as West Ham Batman, and several other websites, blogs and blogs to actually lend a collective, stronger voice of people backing the motion, and that had been set up by the West Ham Fan Action Group on their march. Obviously, what happened. I don't know if you want to do massive great detail about it, but it'd probably make a great story.
Sorry, back over to you, Steph.
And with regards to the original, sure, thank you. With regards, fans are a little bit jaded by everything.
Hello?
Hi, Stell. Stell, we lost you there.
Losing you, Stell.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're back in.
Yeah, you're back.
With regards to the original question,
Oh, we're losing you again, Stell.
slightly jaded by.
Have you, Stell?
It's just the action group and what's left then?
Yeah,
Who would have thought it?
There he is. We've gone back. On you go, Stell.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, you now.
Can hear now.
Right, sorry. I'll try for the third time. Sorry, Paul. Back to the original question I asked Wayne. Do you think fans are jaded by everything that's happened? Or do you think there's still an appetite for change and protest?
There's some people, yes, there is still an appetite in some quarters. In others, some people, their process is to just simply walk away and throw their hands up and go, I've had enough of this, I'm off. I don't want to give that particular ownership any more money. I'm not going to set foot inside that stadium. You lose those people. They're the ones that actually did mobilise or get more active. They would actually be willing to support any motion or march or any other form of protest or show of displeasure, that you, if you want to call it that in a polite way, that you want to show against its ownership. Because I thought that the cancellation, this is just my personal opinion, it's not the association's opinion, I thought that the 10th of March should have still taken place. But you use that as a force to say, you as Karen Brady have given us a 5,000 word letter. We have shown you how many people we can mobilise to show that this is the amount of people that want you to keep your promises. We will double it next time if you don't keep your promises. That's the way I think it should have been wrapped up and presented. It wasn't a case of, only in my opinion, that we've got this letter now, and let's call off the march. We've gone so far down the line in terms of organising and rallying and getting the message out there for people to attend. With it being cancelled, I think it's done a great disservice to the likes of Wayne. And again, this is only my personal opinion. I think it's done a great disservice to him, where he's trying to organise protests, marches from a particular occasion to another, and people just probably hear the word protest and march and think and roll their eyes and go, not this again, didn't the last one get cancelled? So I think in the long run, it's actually done a great disservice to showing that you're not entirely happy with the situation over their football club.
Yeah, I think the big problem with March the 10th, and my view is always was the same, and I expressed it at various meetings. But yeah, we achieved what we wanted by getting into dialogue with the club, but I felt the fans still needed to have their day, and the fans' day would have been March the 10th. And going forward to the new protest, that was always our aim, just to keep it in their mind that, look, you go back on what you've promised, you don't invest in the squad in the summer, we can still raise the numbers. But now they're going to be looking at it and think, well, hang on, can they really raise the numbers? Do we have to go through with what we've promised? Because at the moment, if I was David Sullivan, I'd be sitting there thinking, I don't know if they can do it again. That's just my opinion. But
Well, those are both good points, because that brings me on to what really is my final question. What are your plans? What are both group's plans over the summer. And let's take it in two scenarios. First scenario, invest and get a decent manager in. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. The first scenario is if the board do actually properly invest, and if they actually get a decent manager in to take the team forward, how would you both progress? What are your short-term, medium-term plans for that? Paul, Wayne, whichever work. I don't mind. Whoever's first.
Personally, if they go through with what they plan, I believe Karen Brady will go through with the commitments that she's made to the Real West Ham fans group. I believe she'll do that because that's down on paper. I don't think they'll go back on that. And there's not a great expense involved on any of them things on that list. So I think they'll be done. Obviously, the stadium won't be done because that's out of our hands because E20 own the stadium, not us. But if we come into the new season and the squad's been invested in, we've got a decent manager in there, I don't believe there would be any legs in protesting. I don't believe there'd be any reason to protest. Do I think that will happen? No, I don't, because I've got no faith in David Sullivan. There we go.
Same question to you.
At the moment, the association are running a petition calling on Karen Brady to give up her Saturday column in the Sun, the one which talks about football, considering it's caused reputational embarrassment to the football club and the fans. It's a source of constant humiliation. She pisses off other football clubs, people that are in the industry. She pisses off the players. For example, the column after the 10th of March, I should say, she was saying, "Oh, sorry," but it was over our heads. It was just, in my opinion, it was over our heads, and it was directed to a much wider audience. It wasn't actually apologising for the things like saying, "Be under no illusion, we're all part of the greatest stadium migration in history," when anyone with a pair of eyes, or probably not if case, or whatever it is, you can see this stadium's not actually fit for purpose, of what purpose for us. And it is a taxpayer-owned stadium, so there's so many layers of bureaucracy and cost that will be involved in doing anything there. Mid to long term, we've launched something called United Campaign for Change. We're not looking as the association to co-opt anyone in to that. If you want to become a member, sign up. That's great, perfect. We're more than happy to have you. But we're not looking for any other groups to lose their identity or their independence. Sit down, have a chat with us. We're more than happy to talk with you and share the ideas that we've got currently at the moment. And maybe there's some synergy here. Maybe there's something that can actually be achieved by working together on certain things. Because what we're looking to do is not to organise the large mobilisations like Wayne has undertaken and will be undertaking possibly in the future. But it's more what we're thinking and calling small targeted campaigns of certain interests for certain people, where you can do things which will cause them reputational damage, that cause them embarrassment. And it's exactly using the kind of phraseology that Wayne used. It's keeping up the pressure, letting them know you're still there.
So by the sounds of it, you're both intent on continuing with the separate actions that you have, but there is a slight nuance in how you're going about it. That's what I'm hearing, and it doesn't necessarily seem to suggest that a lot of working together might come about from it.
We all want the same thing, don't we? At the end of the day, we all want the same thing.
I agree that you do, but by going about it in very different ways suggests that there may not be a lot of cross-working.
Look, I've got no problem with any other group. Make that clear now. Any other group wants to talk to us, get involved, not a problem. We sat down before the Everton game, me and my committee, and we're looking at some different ideas for the new season. Something that wouldn't necessarily need us getting 2,000 people involved. Obviously, I'm not going to speak about them on here just yet. But yeah, we are looking at different ways of doing it in the new season. But I think at the end of the day, everyone wants the same thing, don't they? We want a successful football club. We go about it different ways, but at the end of the day, we want the same goal, don't we? So like I say, we've got no problem with work with anyone else. We go from here, really, don't we? It's time to move forward and forget what's happened in the past.
I've got another quick question, unless you want to respond to that, Paul.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sorry for interrupting. We're pretty much two sides of the same coin.
Go on, Ant.
All right, sorry. I was aware of it. I was gone there. Sorry, Paul. Great question coming in from Marcus. Have either group, both of whom seem to want change at the top, look to try and engage with potential consortium members and or figureheads? I feel an alternative proposal is needed. I'll throw this one to you, Paul, first.
What consortium is the question they're talking about?
I believe a members and or a figurehead. So I make the assumption it's maybe an ex-player who's got connections, etc. about a takeover.
I couldn't even tell you where to start on thinking about a takeover. Takeover would be for me personally, would be an absolute great thing for this football club, because it mean we'll be rid of the current ownership as it stands at the moment. I'm not personally not averse at all to talking to anyone, be it as you say in a scenario, an ex-player or anyone else with a figurehead, to actually talk about anything along those lines.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not something that I would get involved with. Obviously, we all know that I'm closely aligned with the Real West Ham fans group. I believe if anyone was going to do that, that's what they would get involved with. It's not something I'd personally get involved with. But yeah, would I welcome new owners? I'd love to see new owners. But they'd have to be the right owners. Let's not go down the road that some of these other clubs have done and get the wrong owners in, because we'll just be back where we are now, don't we? It's got to be owners with the money to back up the promises. And at the moment, we ain't got that, have we?
Stella, are you okay if I keep going? There's a few more in there from YouTube. We may have lost Stella a little bit, but I'll just keep going if we keep going anyway. So if the owners aren't going to sell until 2023, which is what we believe, what's the aim of the group until then? And I'll put this one to you, Wayne.
Again, we'll go back to what we've said earlier. I don't believe they'll sell. Honestly, I don't believe they'll sell the club. And certainly not in the short term. So we have to keep the pressure on to get them to start to change their ways and start investing in the club. It all comes back to investing in the club. It can't just be take all the time, which is what it currently seems to be, and just using us fans and the club as a cash cow, because that's what they're doing. So yeah, we need to not work with them. Well, we do need to work with them, I suppose, until they do decide to sell. I don't think they will. I think it'll be handed down to their kids. But no, we just have to keep the pressure on and make change. The only people going to force change is club of the fans. It's not going to come from the current ownership.
Yep. Over to you, Paul.
Sorry, what was the question again?
If we're led to believe that the owners aren't going to sell until 2023, what do you intend to do as a group until then?
As the Independent Support Association, we're set up more than just being a protest movement. There's a number of things that we do anyway with the Football Supporters Federation, attending their fan conferences, making representations on behalf of our membership to authorities like the police at their meetings, before games, the high-profile games like the Chelseas and the Tottenhams of the world. So there's a number of things as the Independent Sports Association that we do anyway, outside of organising this petition going on at the moment against Karen Brady's Sun column. And it is actually trying to do with the day-to-day things, like trying to get, we did successfully help in getting a fan's stadium ban overturned because it was a case of mistaken identity. He was accused of throwing a coin or coins or whatever on the 10th of March at the director's box. We managed to, and he as well managed to get secured from the football club his CCTV coverage for 90 minutes of that game, and he was sat in the East End the whole time. So it was a case of mistaken identity, making representations on behalf of other people with ticket office. There's a case that was a couple of weeks ago where there was a woman who twice this season has been told there's women-only search lanes on a particular bridge, on bridge number 5. So we've made representations to the club, and the club have confirmed to us that their training manual or the training that they're participating in before every game with the LS 185 stewarding is to try and enforce there is no female-only search lanes, and that everyone's to be treated proportionally and fairly. And it's making those kind of representations and acting on behalf of our membership or anyone else that contacts us. So that's what we aim to do in the mid, the long, and the short term.
Still, are you back in with us? I think he's not, so I've got some more questions, guys. I'm going to keep going if that's okay.
Yeah, fine.
No worries.
So after Brady wrote her last column that the issues at the club were made worse by keyboard warriors, do you think the protest will ever change her mind, and how would you do that? And I'll put this one to you, Wayne.
Well, here we go. It's really what I was saying earlier, wasn't it? About not keyboard warriors so much, about people just going on Facebook, moaning and moaning and moaning and not doing anything about it. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to Karen Brady. All right, she's had a little pop in her column in the Sun, but it's not really affecting her, is it? But again, 2,000 fans outside her corporate entrance will have an effect on her. And that's what we keep coming back to. And that's the main issue I have with people. If you want to support the group, you support the group. If you want to just go on Facebook and keep moaning and saying you're going to do it, it's not going to cause change, because you're on Facebook. It doesn't affect her. It may irritate her. It may irritate her when she gets abusive tweets. But at the end of the day, you bounce it off, and she's not being funny. She's been in probably worse situations than that.
Yeah, same. Over to you.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment there from Wayne, where he says that if people are not willing to do something about a situation, regardless of what it is, then there will be no change. There isn't anything that will happen, and everything stays exactly the same. Like Karen Brady in a Sun column, for example, years and years ago, was saying that the East End of London was a hotbed for racism in the 70s and 80s and the 60s, and Clive Best was subject to a hail of bananas from West Ham fans, which is absolutely a ludicrous slur and absolutely abhorrent. And she can get away with saying stuff like that all the way up to now, saying that the reason why it was so bad is because of what she was calling keyboard warriors and malcontent, which actually is incredibly dismissive of people's genuine concerns or issues, or their belief that the club is not actually being run in a manner that's actually fit and proper. So she is incredibly dismissive. If you meet her in person, you sit down with her, you can tell pretty much straight away if she does not like you or not. I can tell you, the Independent Sports Association, she hates us. And I wouldn't be surprised if she hates anyone that looks to protest or looks to actually tell her to her face what the reality of a situation is, which is, we believe, give up your Sun column on Saturday. She has a Sunday column, which is actually a personal opinions piece. She wrote last Sunday about Roman Polanski and the Me Too movement and all that sort of thing. That's her prerogative. That's her right. She can do that. That's her opinion. She's been she's been paid to write a column in that paper on the Sunday, but she also gets paid on the Saturday, and she writes solely about football and gossips about football, or she causes reputational damage to the football club and embarrassment to us fans. So how does that actually help us? And if people want to see the back of that, or they actually want to see something happen, then you've got to stand up and do something about it. Be it go on a protest, sign a petition, or actually engage with those people who are actually voicing that particular opinion of, we want this to change, we want this to stop.
Lads, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can. We're back.
Excellent. So based on that, Paul, moving forward, both groups, I mean, you've talked about, you could talk about doing things together or offline. So is there a kind of an appreciation or an endorsement of what each group is trying to achieve? I'll hand that over to you first, Paul.
Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we both want the same thing. And as has been pointed out before as part of this discussion, it's about the nuance of how you get there. Effectively, just thinking about it off the top of my head, it's almost like a memorandum of understanding where we're not going to physically sign something. We're not going to sign papers and exchange them like North and South Korea and shake hands and all that sort of stuff. But it's actually just through talking with each other on this kind of platform, or in a pub, beer garden, or anywhere else where we can actually settle some of the things that have happened in the past, actually get an understanding, see where each other are coming from. And as I've said earlier, there's a couple of ideas that I shared previously with the person who had the social media account for the Real West Ham fan action group, which I'm more than happy to share with Wayne outside of this environment here, which he might find beneficial, he might not. It might be cost effective, it might not, but I'm more than happy to discuss those kind of things.
Wayne?
Yes, same here. I think spot on what Paul just said, to be fair. And I think a lot of the other groups out there could do with taking note of what's gone on here tonight, because there's not that much difference between the groups. It's a matter of people getting together and talking. Let's be honest, and that's just what's not been happening, is it? There's too many groups out there who, how do I put it without offending it? Well, I'm going to offend someone, sod it. They run like dictatorships. There's groups out there with 20,000 members. You go post something on there because their admin team don't agree with it, it's deleted. Well, hang on, you're running a group. Surely them members of that group should have a chance to see other people's views, because I'm guaranteed that they don't all agree with their admins. So it's a matter of just letting people have that chance to put their point across. I've got no problem with other people's points of view. But what annoyed me through the protest thing is the amount of abuse people threw at us over it. Called morons, told we're going to ruin games and things like that. And that's never the case. And I think I had this debate with you still. Well, I think you'll probably remember it.
I do indeed.
The idea of the protests was never to cause disruption in the games. It was never the idea. And I made it quite clear at the time that it would be a peaceful protest, and it was. Because let's be honest, nobody wanted to see at that Southampton game a repeat of what happened against Burnley.
Absolutely.
Because that would have been absolute carnage. And that was the original idea behind the protest, or the march before the Southampton game, was to try and make sure there was no repeat of that situation that we had against Burnley, because that would have been carnage, I think, if that had happened again. And let's be honest, we all know what happened. Everyone got behind the team. We had a good result.
So can I ask, do you guys perhaps see, maybe not in the immediate future, but maybe in the midterm, of there being one supporters group, whatever it may be called, that goes forward in unity to continue this protest against the board? Can either of you actually foresee one group representing the whole fan base?
I don't think it'll ever just be one group. I think it'll always be an umbrella of groups, personally. I think because there is people, they've got different views how on things done. And I think we need that. We need that to have groups with different ideas, because not everyone's going to agree, are they? And I think if we get into one super group, I just think it would cause more trouble than it would good, personally.
So,
I think we're separate groups.
The example I gave earlier of the Liverpool fan base, I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of the different groups, but maybe they had factions as well. But they put all that to one side and became one super group. So, Paul, do you not potentially see that?
I'd agree with Wayne to a point. I don't think there's going to be a big umbrella grouping or a super group or anything like that in the future. Everyone's got the right to their own opinion on how, or the nuance of how they're going to approach something, or the way they're going to go about it. Wayne has the absolute right, as does anyone else, to do things the way they're going to be doing things. We are set up in a completely different way. So if anyone, for example, in a fantasy scenario was to say we want to become part of the Independent Sports Association, there's certain legal constructs that we have, which is our constitution and everything that comes with that people have to actually sign up to and agree with. So we're set up in a completely different way to what would be organising a Facebook page or a rallying call for something else, or one of the old school forums. So there's definitely scope for working together. There's definitely that. There's there's definitely space for coordination as well, in terms of something that one step might be partaking in that we can aid or facilitate or help, and maybe it's one part of two, and then they're the first part, we're the second part, vice versa, wherever it is. But I agree with the sentiment. I don't think there's ever going to be one massive group. We, as the association, and Wayne obviously as part of the Direct Action group, would hope to have as many members as possible and many people joined. You don't have to be exclusively us or them, if you want to put it like that. You don't have to be exclusively only to partaking in one set of content from one website, one YouTube channel, one Twitter feed, wherever it is, because so many people are spread or get their news or content from so many different places. You don't have to be only us, and you don't only have to be them. So there's no harm in working together. Ultimately, the point you make about the Liverpool grouping, you'd have to actually ask Spirit of Change, because we hosted them before. They're great guys to talk to, because they're also Football Supporters Federation affiliated. So I'd have to actually, off the back of what you've been saying, I'd have to actually talk to them and see how that worked, or how they came together to actually do what they did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I work closely with John at OLAS, obviously, and Nick at Cross Dammers, and the lads at Real West Ham Fans Group. But I think we need them separate identities, because I'm always going to want to retain my right to say to someone, shut up, I think you're a twat. Let's be honest, that's what it comes down to, isn't it? So I think we need the separate groups, but there's no harm in groups working together. And I think that's what we need to get to, groups working together.
Okay. And
I just want to make a quick point. This is not a question. This is probably a personal question. Do you ever find that your group that you're involved with, the consortium, any group that you are a member of, takes over or blinds your opinion of your own opinion of West Ham? So, we are involved with Irons United. We run several social media sites. We run a website. We run our YouTube channel. We try and remain impartial, and very rarely we get to give our own real honest opinion on the situation. So do you feel, for example, Paul, when you're part of WHUISA, does the group take over and gloss over your own personal opinion on the situation?
I always think West Ham will lose every single game we're playing, and that's always been before I was ever part of the association or anything like that. And I always find it a nice surprise when we actually do win a game, or if we actually ever achieve any sort of success. That's actually a fair question. As being vice chair of the association, I've found it's a privilege. There's a certain feeling you get, like a little bit of a buzz when you actually help someone, or you're able to point them in the right direction. And I feel at times that dealing with a football club, you can actually just shake your head and you read some of the correspondence that people share with you in confidence, and you feel, why am I even bothering to do this in the first place if this is the way the football club will treat people? Because a lot of the time, there's people that work at that football club at the moment that treat the fans like garbage. Treat them like an absolute scum of the earth. I can't believe that you've got an issue, scrape off the bottom of the foot, kind of chewing gum, flick it away, hoping it goes away. Whilst ourselves as the association, as said, long answer, before we make representations on behalf of people that are caught in those kind of situations where they feel like they've got no return, whilst Wayne is, as part of what he's doing, is representing people that actually want to actively mobilise and show their displeasure. They've got the banners, they've got the flags, and they've got the will to stand there to do what they're doing and to say, we've had enough, we're not putting up with this shit anymore. I feel that, does it cloud the way I see West Ham? As I say, I always think we lose every game. When we win, happy days. My support of the club will always be there. But this current incarnation of the football club, the way it's been run at the moment, you feel so taken aback that it's not actually what you grew up with, and it's not actually what you first fell in love with, and you kind of try to cling on to this motion of what it was, but now you've got to have the realization of what it now is, and you've got to try and make what you have now as good as you can. I always use this analogy with people. Anyone who knows me listens to this, I always say you can roll a turd in glitter, it's still a turd, and that's what it honestly feels like for me at the moment with this football club.
Same to you, Wayne.
To be honest, while Gold and Sullivan are there, my view of the club is always going to be slightly tainted, because I think we just run like a circus now. I mean, I'll get behind the team when I'm in that ground, don't get me wrong. But other than that, I just don't believe anything that comes out of their mouths anymore. And the split that it's caused amongst fans, it's just unbelievable. I've never known anything like it. I mean, I've lost some good friends over the last few months for all this. Different views that people have had. And my view is, I mean, I'm still mates with some people who've got totally opposed views to me. But I'm quite forthright in what I say. I mean, if I've got something to say, I'll say it. But my view is, if I say it, doesn't mean I don't like you. I mean, I've put my view across. You take it how you want. But some people take it too personally. I don't take it personally. I'll debate with anyone, as Estelle knows. But I think that's the problem now. It's become too personal for people. And people, I think that's tainted people's view of the club. I think a lot of people have fallen out over this. And I don't know. I think that's the bigger problem at the moment, is rebuilding some of them friendships that people have lost. And it's a shame that it's happened over football. And not because people have fallen out particularly, because the way the club's run. And that's what's caused all this. It's just unbelievable. At the start of this season, I would have never said that I'd have fallen out with certain people. And it's all become because of this club. And it's just unbelievable.
Paul, you mentioned earlier that we've never seen anything like it. But I mean, I'm old enough to remember the bond scheme and what happened there with the protests. You touched on it earlier. You both did, actually. But we didn't have this split between fans in the same way as we've had now. So, ironically, as much as this board leave a lot to be desired, we've had boards in the past that have treated us pretty badly. The bond scheme being such an example. But the big difference, from what I can remember, is that there wasn't the split. The fans were together in the bond scheme. Or the majority of fans seem to be. Do you think maybe there's a bigger split because social media plays a part in all this?
I was just about to say exactly that. I think social media is a great tool, but it can be a very divisive tool. And I think that is what's caused so much of the split is social media. Because if you go back to the bond scheme, it was done by word of mouth, wasn't it? So it was... You would generally only speak to like-minded people about it. You wouldn't involve the bloke sitting 20 rows away who had no interest in it. It wasn't rammed down their throat so much, if you get what I mean. It was, you knew the people who were going to get involved with it, and they were the people you spoke to. Whereas now, people are kind of dragged into it, whether they want to be or not, because they're in different groups and things like that. And some people just got no interest in it. And I suppose if you're one of those people who've got no interest in it, it must get tiresome, keep seeing it on Facebook. I'd imagine it must. I mean, for me, I'm well into it, but if you're not into that kind of thing, it must drag you down to a degree when you see the rows going on over it.
So does social media represent the majority of fans who are interested in this, or out of the 50,000 odd season ticket holders, does it represent a minority? Paul?
To go back to the previous point, and then I'll try to answer that as best I can. I don't know if it's because of obviously the increasing capacity in the stadium, or if it's a societal issue, or wherever it is in general. I've seen more scraps and fights between 2 or 3 people in the stands for seemingly random things over the last couple of seasons than I've ever seen whenever I went over the Boleyn. Like one of the guys who ran on the pitch to protest after Burnley scored one of the goals, he went back up the staircase, and there's random people all the way up the staircase shoving him, jostling him. Some people throwing punches at him. And I thought other people that have either pitch invaded before at the Boleyn or other grounds, like if they ever managed to make it back in the stands, they never had clumps or never had anyone doing anything like that. I've never seen anything like this myself personally. I think it's a great shame because there isn't actually a need for a lot of the animosity. I don't know if it's drugs or alcohol induced or if it's just tensions because of the game or whatever it is, like that causes these incidents in the stands. But I've not seen as many fights amongst ourselves, like blue on blue, than I have done the last couple of seasons. With social media, after that long ramble, with social media, Wayne makes a very good point. You can get the good and the bad. You can put something out there, gets a bit of a positive reaction, and then you get someone who's basically either going to be either sexist, racist, whatever to you. I don't have a problem. because I'm not known. No one knows who I am. So it's ultimately it's good as a galvanizing tool. If it's a common cause, if people feel interested, they can click, they can like, they can follow. You can get 15, 16,000 followers of your Facebook group, but how many people out of those will actually be willing to mobilize or be able to answer the call to arms or actually partake in signing something or clicking something that will actually start the ball rolling as a process to actually make change? And the saying goes, opinions are like arseholes, everyone's got one. So it's a great forum for gathering what people are feeling to try and get a consensus of the general theme of if people are annoyed, if they're happy, if they're angry, or if they're ecstatic, or whatever it is. But then there's a double-edged sword of sometimes that can be turned and used against you maliciously, personal. It's a great tool, but also, as I say, it's a double-edged sword.
Yep. Do we have any more questions, Andy?
Yeah, I'm just going to a quick rundown. I'll try and there's some questions I'm going to read out we've probably answered, so just confirm if we have. Let me quickly go down and give me 2 seconds. Are they more upset that the move has happened and the club is not top 6, or they deem the stadium not fit for purpose? Please try and, if we can, just keep some of these kind of quick fire answers. So Wayne, are you more upset that the move has happened and the club is not in top 6, or they deem the stadium not fit for purpose?
It's the lies, isn't it? Let's be honest, we were sold a dream and it was sold to us on lies. The move's happened, we've got to deal with the move. We can't change that. But for me, it's just the unfulfilled promises. That's my issue. Wouldn't bother me if we weren't top 6. I'd want to see attractive football with players that they promise we get, the marquee signings. Let's be honest, we're West Ham. We don't expect to win things. I mean, that's just crazy talk. But for me, it's just the unfulfilled promises. Yeah. That's the problem.
Over to you, Paul.
Yeah. Out of the things that were asked there in that particular question, it would have to be the fact that we moved in the first place. We had the kind of season now that we probably would have had at the Bowling Ground anyway. That final season at the Bowling, so special to so many people. There's a couple of instances off the top of my head I can remember. We were absolutely robbed in the FA Cup quarter-final away to Man United. That was an offside goal as well as a foul on Randolph. And also Kyoto's red card while we're 2-1 up at home to Crystal Palace. The red card was overturned. We draw the game 2-2, which robbed us of 2 points, or potentially 2 points there, to finish higher up in the league where we were flying. We were doing so well. To me, as I say, the exact question there, if I had to pick one of the 2 options there, it would be the factory move.
Right,
can I add a question to that? Do you think perhaps we should have been louder in our voices well before the move ever happened?
Wayne made a very good point earlier where he I believe it, I think it was Wayne, and correct me if I'm absolutely wrong here, where on the lines of we were sold a lie and there was promises made, and a lot of people went along with that and they thought that actually this is going to be the beneficial for the football club, the increased revenue, increase in capacity will somehow lead to additional resources being given to the manager to give them the best opportunity to actually go win games. That poll that the club did of the season ticket holders, I was one of those that voted. I didn't vote yes because I love the board or anything like that, and I didn't vote no under any circumstance. So when I selected was I would only support this if I had more information. So it was outside the 85% that voted in one of the 3 positive answers. I was never given more information, and the club just did the move anyway.
Okay. Yeah. With hindsight, we all should have got together before the move. But hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? We were all sold a lie. And I was one of those that bought into the lie, I'll be totally honest with you. And I would say probably for the first 6-7 months of the move, I supported the board. I'll be totally honest with you. I mean, it probably shocked a few people now with my opinions. But the one I'm more disappointed with out of all of them is David Gold, I'll be totally honest with you. I believe he came into it with the best interest of the club at heart, but I now believe he's just been steamrolled by David Sullivan. And what Gold says doesn't really matter because Sully will do what he wants to do.
Any more questions, Sam?
Yeah, there is. Just a couple of statements more than anything. West Ham were always a cup fighting club, so what's happened to the emphasis? That's from Dennis Baxter. We have said what happens if they don't buy decent players under a good manager and we're in a relegation battle. It could then be too late because not enough fans have done enough to make their voices heard. That's from Mickey Peters. This is Mickey Peters again. She's just using that as an excuse because the Bourne ain't good enough, relating to Karen Brady. Jimbo says, I believe they need to explore other options for building support rather than relying on social media. There's too much apathy and excuse making to be found there. Marches to incorporate the pubs, etc. That's from Jimbo.
Yeah, that's something we discussed, funnily enough, before the Man City game, that we can't rely on social media as a tool to get people together because it gives you a false impression of what support you're going to get on the day. So that's something we have looked at, and something we'll be doing a few things during the pre-season friendlies to hopefully get that message out to people more face-to-face rather than just through Facebook.
Just a quick fire answer for this one. Do you think that no amount of protest will work whilst West Ham stay in the Premier League? If we got relegated, season ticket holders would have overnight. That is where it would hurt most. What do you say about that, Paul?
I would agree with the sentiment of if West Ham United did get relegated at any point, ticket sales on a match day as well as season ticket would always go down. Maybe not half, maybe a quarter, third, whatever it is. Probably people, if we were sleepwalking towards a relegation, which seemed to happen this season, for a large part of it, we seem to rely on other people being worse than us. You would actually get probably a lot more mobilisation, a lot more people willing to actually join those that are actually trying to do something already in the first place to actually get a point their point of view. As I said a little while ago, it's probably people just taking a collective sigh of relief and thinking, great, that season's over, let's focus on the next one, rather than actually trying to get something changed about the issue at hand right now.
Okay.
I think protests will work, but they have to be constant, and that's the only way to get through to these people. And like I say, 2,000 people every game outside their corporate entrance don't sound a lot out of 50,000 people, but it's enough to cause them an effect every match day. But yeah, so we carry on.
It looks like we've got a couple of the groups that have previously been involved that are in the chat as well. So there's some comments in there related to some of the meetings. We have covered it, but we might just leave that just now and we'll maybe come back to that. There's a couple of other comments here. Let me just get to them. Where are we? Sorry. I think was that us coming closer? But there's so many. There's literally so many comments. There's quite a lot of people on here watching tonight, so which is not a bad thing to get everyone's points across. Alf has come in saying he was never up for the move. He said so many times that it was wrong, but you know what? Nobody was really listening anyway. It's a great point, Alf. We've talked about that recently. There's a couple of well-known social media accounts, not groups, one particular account that did state well back before all the information was getting put out that the move was never going to work for various reasons, and he felt like he was a minority, and at the time he absolutely was. But if he created a group now, he'd probably be members left, right and centre. Why are the club lying? Here's a good point here, and maybe I'll throw this one to you, Paul. Why are the club lying about the waiting list for season tickets? Because I'm on it even though I have 2 season tickets.
Very good point. And the person asking the question there, do they actually know what physical number they are in the queue? Because to me, a queue would be, you know, your number 1, number 2, number 3, number 99, number 100, so on and so forth. So they, in theory, would call number 1. If they can't take up, or they do take up, great, move to number 2, move to number 3, so on and so forth. That, to me, is a queue. You know exactly where you are in position. You talk to any Tottenham Hotspur or Arsenal fan, they actually have an allocated number in the queue. They know exactly where they are in relation to everyone else's season tickets or membership cards or whatever it is they're purchasing. Here, we don't. And to me, it seems like they keep advertising, we want another £10 off of you, keep racking up a tenner, but then they want to advertise, we've got 50 to 55,000 season ticket holders anyway, and now we've got another waiting list of another 50,000 people mysteriously out of nowhere. Where are all these people that are going to be buying tickets? A lot of the time, a lot of people from the boat... Sorry,
go on, Paul, go on.
So I just very, very quickly was going to say, from the bowling ground, I know a couple of people that are members who automatically, as part of their membership for the final season of the bowling ground, were added to the waiting list. They never wanted their season ticket. And child members were automatically added in a couple of instances as well. That's just from people I knew from in and around me when I went to the bowling ground. I don't know if that's the case why the numbers are padded up, so to speak, to say there's another 50,000 people waiting to have a season ticket.
I was going to ask, what do you think is if there is a waiting list, what do you think the realistic numbers are? Wayne?
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. But if we've got this amazing, huge waiting list, why is it most games I can buy tickets? If we've got 50,000 people desperate to go to them games, why is it most games I can go online and buy a ticket? There's no logic to it, is there? If you've got 50,000 people waiting, then tickets should be gone like that.
Mm-hmm. Couple of more things. Crossed Hammers is in, and he's saying to you, Wayne, do you ever take a cigarette out of your mouth?
Very rarely. Very rarely. Thanks for that, Nick.
He's also said that his 66 seats from last year still has his name on them, even though he was moved this season. Loads of people in here stating that they believe they're still on the waiting list, even though they don't want to be. I think I'm getting through most of them. I think I've got through most of the questions in there. Back to yourself, Stel. Where are we at now?
Well, I'm done for questions.
Right,
to be
excellent.
Honest.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Wayne, I suppose, do you know what? What we need to do is give you a chance to tell people about your group. So if you can try and keep it as short as possible, but let people know where to find you, what your plan is, maybe moving forward into the next season, if that's okay.
It's difficult to say what we're going to do next season because it's very dependent on what the club do. But our intention is when the club don't fulfil their promises, which I have no doubt that the shyster, Mr. Sullivan, won't fulfil his promises, we'll organise some more direct action, be that marches, be that protests. We have got a group, and I can't actually remember the name of it now. Oh, no.
I'll tell you your group name.
Go for
the West Ham United Direct Action Group.
That's the one. WHU in it. It's not WHU Direct Action.
WHU.
That's it, yeah. Group. So I couldn't remember whether I put the full title or just WHO. But no, we've got a group. Anyone wants to join, they're more than welcome. But we not limit the membership, but we only want people to join it who actually want to take part in direct action. I've got no interest in having 6,000 people on there and only 100 people that want to take action. We've only got a couple of hundred members on there, to be totally honest with you. But they're people who want to take part in action, and that's what we're looking for, to be fair. Yeah. We don't just want a group of people just going to sit there watching and not actually take any part. So, yeah, people are more than welcome to come along and join.
So, as it stands, Wayne, you have a presence on Facebook, is that correct?
Yeah, just Facebook at the moment, right. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Paul, over to you if you want to give us a little bit of the people listening tonight.
Sure. West Ham United Independent Support Association, fully constituted, legally binding, affiliated with the Football Supporters Federation, so there's a large network of other associations and trusts, Premier League, Football League, that we can tap into their knowledge and they can ask us questions. And we host them, they host us. We're here to help and support people if they have issues, concerns, worries, make representations of the football club on their behalf. Over 4,000 members, all paid up. We want as many people to join us as possible. It's only £1 to join. We're more than happy, even if you're not a member and you have an issue, to come with us, and we will make as best a representation as possible, offer advice. As I say, we can seek advice from our FSF colleagues as well. We have previously on some legal matters on behalf of supporters. We're just here to basically, we'll talk to anyone, we'll help represent you if you come to us. You're going to ask me about a Facebook page. I'm not on Facebook. I don't actually know what our web link is there. But if someone searches for WHUISA, they'll probably find us. Twitter handle at WHUISA 2017. I didn't come up with it. Please don't ask me why. We've got 2017 there. And our website is www.whuisa.org.
Perfect. One last comment that's come in from YouTube is, it seems to be a lot of agreeing tonight. So what did the groups disagree on?
Oh, good point.
Wayne?
Probably about who should play left back.
Debate. I don't actually believe I've ever actually disagreed with them. I don't think we've actually sat down and spoke. I think that's the major issue, rather than disagreeing. We all know what went on over March the 10th, and that's got to be forgotten. If I weren't particularly myself, but we all know what went on. But I don't think we've sat down and spoke. I think that's been the major issue. But while I'd just like to say thanks for all my admins who are now abusing me on Messenger for getting the group name wrong.
So will we see dialogue between you guys offline in the near future?
Yeah, from my point of view, definitely.
This reminds me of a very popular date show where at the end of it you get two birds and they fire a little arrow and there's a love heart, and then later on what we want to see is a selfie with a couple of groups meeting. I'm slightly adding a little bit of humour to the situation. I know it's a lot more serious to that. But listen, Wayne, I can't thank you enough for coming onto the channel, getting your point across. Paul, exactly the same, coming onto the channel, getting your point across. Please understand, as Irons United, we're trying to remain as impartial as possible, but at the end of the day, we are all West Ham fans, and at the end of the day, I do believe we all have the same goal in mind, which is we want to see the best football we possibly can, and we want to gain or regain that West Ham way. And hopefully, as maybe not Stell's generation, but the younger generation can start to see the winning successful West Ham that we all crave. And one thing I just want to remind everyone who is watching it: we are all West Ham at the end of the day. We are a West Ham family, and that's what needs to come at the forefront of anything. The minute, for me personally, that Irons United takes over my love for this club is the minute I stop. So that's my final point. Anyone else want to make a final point before we go? Stell?
No, I'm good. Thank you guys for coming on tonight and for answering the questions.
It's been a pleasure anytime.
Excellent. Finally, before we go, all the social stuff will be in the site, all the websites will be there. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, make sure you get the comments in, and we'll get back to you soon. We are West Ham United.